And welcome back, everyone, to the Pokemon Team Creation Series. As always, this comes to us from someone in my book, in this case, JRC, who asked the question, what is the Pokemon team of the third Espada from Bleach, Harribel? Now, it's sometimes pronounced Harribel with a double L, and sometimes it's pronounced Harribel with double R. The most common spelling I've found is Harribel, but it could be a translation issue because the R doesn't really exist in the Chinese-Japanese language very well. Particularly, I don't believe R really... is it R or L? It's L. I'm sorry, it's L. The letter L doesn't exist in this traditional sense in those languages as it does in, like, say, the English or other languages. And you know that because of the... I'm not trying to sound racist. When you ever hear the Mino Reiki joke, which is a very racist joke, that is actually because L is a very difficult, it doesn't naturally occur. So I think it's Harribel, but because of the translation, it comes out as Harribel. I could be wrong on that. Let me know. It doesn't really matter. It's just for pronunciation. I'll be saying Harribel because I like Harribel a bit better than Harribel. But I can't promise I won't be going back. Anyway, Harribel. Harribel is the third Espada, which means out of the 10 characters that make up that group, she is technically the third strongest. She's the one who goes against Toshiro in the Fake Kuratown arc. She's the one that's got a lot of fan service about her. I wanted to choose an image that I could find that would be a good image that wouldn't be like, oh my god, it's so sexual. I mean, she definitely has a very sexualized design. I'm not going to lie. But she's still, in concept, a really cool character. I just watched Mr. Atomo, 12, I think it's Atomo 12's video on her recently, and he does make a good point. She didn't get the best show. She had a great starting showing for her, like, abilities and all that. But she didn't have the best showing in terms of the long haul of the fight. Still, she's a cool character, but in terms of a Pokemon team, she's both simplistic and a little bit complicated. What do I mean by that? Well, her main ability is simply to manipulate water. Her Zanpakuto is called Tirabun, or and they're Spanish, so it's a Tirabun or Tirabun or something. I believe it's Tirabun, which is roughly speaking just Spanish for shark or shark tooth, something along those lines. I believe it's shark, and she manipulates water. Okay, great, wonderful. One of the big things about her, and you can notice if I enlarge the video right here, is that her sword is actually a little different than her swords. Because of the way it's shaped here, you can't see it, or angled, I should say. But you can see it a little bit. It's hollowed out, and it's very thick. So I knew that because she actually had a very unique blade, that you have to do a standard hone edge. You have to go hone edge. I could have gone Aegislash. I could have gone double. I'm not doing double blade. Double blade's two swords. I only save that for individuals who use two swords. But Hone Edge just makes sense. But after that, what do we have? Well, I think obviously without too much difficulty, her main Pokemon is a Sharpedo. Particularly, as you see here, a Mega Sharpedo. This would make perfect sense. She is shark-based. Her Zanpakuto is Tirabun Shark. This is shockingly, think about this. If you take out the fact that Garchomp is a land shark / dragon, this is the only shark Pokemon we have. Stop and think about that for a second, because I had to really think and go through everything. But no, this is the only shark Pokemon we have. Think about that. That is kind of, with all the multiple dog and cat and snake and bird and rodent, one shark out of this entire thing? This just doesn't add up in my mind. Like, no, we should have, especially with like Alola, Paldea, just other regions that had either tropical or, close to ocean type of regions. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Regardless, Mega Sharpedo also makes sense because, this would have been her main Pokemon, so it would have been the Pokemon she bonded the most with, which is a requirement for Mega Evolution, having a strong bond with your Pokemon. But beyond that, it represents the fact that when she releases her Zanpakuto, she releases her full power. When you Mega Evolve Sharpedo, you release its full power. So there you go, that makes sense. The rest of the Mon on this team, though, are very simply just aspects of her ability to manipulate water. Now, the reason that is the case is because once you get past a cool sword and the Sharpedo being a shark base, she doesn't have much else. She has an aspect of her because all the Espadas actually represent an aspect of human death. For example, I think I've done Coyote Stark. He represented loneliness. Have I done any other Espadas, actually? I don't think I've done any other, but just real quick, just to go over them. Yami, the 10th was Rage. The 2nd, I believe, was Gluttony. I think. I'm not actually, yeah, Gluttony, yes. Because the 8th was Madness. Then 7th was Intoxication. 6 represents Destruction. 5 represents Despair. 4 represents Nihilism. 3rd represents Sacrifice. And 2nd represents Time. Senescence, as he put it. So they all have an aspect of them that you could have worked with, but there's a Pokemon that represents Sacrifice. That would have been a real tricky one to do. And even then, like, how do I represent loneliness in a Pokemon? I mean, there are definitely Pokemon that can represent that. It just, some of the spot I'll definitely probably be able to translate that towards a Pokemon. Others, not so much. This was not one. So really, we're looking over abilities and water manipulation. And for a very attractive female character that manipulates water, Milotic was dubbed the most beautiful Pokemon. I think is just a logical avenue to go down. Harribel is, I don't know where her beauty is ranked among the Iran car, but I imagine she's ranked pretty high. I know by the fan base she's ranked pretty high. But it would make sense. A very powerful water Pokemon, considered among the most beautiful Pokemon in the world. Not just water, but beautiful in the world. Just makes sense for Harribel. And like I said, powerful Mons. No doubt about it. Now, she does have several different abilities, including an ability called Cascada, which is basically just doing raining down a giant torrent of water. I mean, like, massive torrent of water that can flood an entire city block easy. She has the ability to boil water, release hot scalding water, and she can just fire like water bullets. So with that aspect, or those abilities down, let's look into some of the mon I chose. For an ability for shooting water-esque bullets or very high pressurized blasts of water, Clawitzer, right out the gate. Clawitzer made the most sense. It literally has a water cannon for an arm. So, and I like Clawitzer. Honestly, even though Scrump is probably the better Pokemon because it is a dragon and poison type ultimately in its final evolution, if you're asking me about like design, I think I like Clawitzer better. And the thing's got massive power, like seriously power. I mean, it is basically the definition of a glass cannon. In fact, let me get the stats for Clawitzer because I can't remember. I think it's special attack that's higher because it is, or is it physical? I think it's a special because it is firing blasts of water. But let me just see if that's translated out at all into either physical or special attack. Because its design would make you think, well, okay, it's got this giant bulky claw. It could use physical attacks. And sure, it can. But that doesn't necessarily mean that its main level of power comes from physical attack. I think it's I'm just waiting for the things to stop being so slow here. Okay, there we go. I'm trying to remember exactly. Oh, come on. Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what its two main stats are. I want to say it's defense and either special or physical attack. I know one of the attacks is off the chart. Maybe not off the chart, but huge. Okay, Clawitzer. Okay, yes, it's its special attack that's huge, not the physical attack. Because, yeah, its biggest stat is 120 in special attack, which makes a lot of sense. Its second biggest stat is actually its special defense and its normal defense at 89 and 88, respectively. And then everything else is just kind of middle of the road. But it literally has a 120 special attack, which makes sense. Anyway, I digress. Then, just to represent something using more like basically a mon that can use things like Hydro Pump, Waterfall, which technically is every mon on this list, minus Honedge. I went with just standard Gyarados. Represents their aggressive side of it. Still kind of, it's more dragon-like, but it's not. Sea Serpent-esque more than anything else. But you can still maybe give a little shark attitude towards it. Either way, though, it can also learn things like Scald. Any of these guys, I believe, except for Honedge, can learn Scald. But, moving towards that, I went with a Pokemon I have never put on a team before, Volcanion. An underrated mon, by the way, in my opinion. Now, it's Fire Water, which is actually a really good typing. We don't get enough of that. There's only 2 Mon actually that are water fire. This and Rotom. Which form of it? Which form of Rotom? No, not even Rotom. Now I think about it. I wanted to say Rotom, but it's actually that's an electric fire and electric water. I believe this is still to date our only fire water type, which sucks. We need more of that. It needs to be a thing. But beyond that, I've just heard people don't like the design. I'm like, what? Honestly, I kind of love this thing's design. I love the blue and the red and a little bit of the yellow there. I love the fact that it's basically a walking, boiler, and it literally has these 2 like steam arms that just fire like pressurized hot water. I actually really like Volcanions, and it's still got this dinosaur reptilian design to it. I actually really like this Pokemon's design. But whatever. And I hope with Legends ZA Kalos, basically Legends Kalos, that just like we did with Legends Arceus, I'll be able to catch one in game, because there's, let's see, how many mythicals was there again in Kalos? There's this, there's Diancie, there is Hoopa, and I think that was it. And obviously you still have Zygarde, you still have Yveltal and Xerneas. We might get like a new one introduced into the game, who knows. Regardless, yeah, Volcanion I wanted to use A because it's super powerful, and basically it's actually the strongest Mon on this team when you actually break it down. Even beyond Mega Sharpedo, it is the strongest one. I'm not mistaken, because being a mythical gives it 600 base stat right out the gate. Mega Sharpedo, I got it right here, 170. Let's see here, 280, 350, 490, and it's got, I believe, 560 in total for its full. Yeah, so this is actually technically her strongest Mon. It would make sense that being as strong as her, who's in like the top 3 of her factions group, would probably have something like an ace up their sleeve. Even though Sharpedo is generally her main ace, especially when using Mega, the others are still useful in their own way. Hell, even Honedge, as I'll get to in a little bit, has its use, at least early in game if you were to use it. So as always, the question is, how balanced is this team? And, okay, so real quick, there aren't actually a lot of crossovers here, but the ones that do crossover hurt quite a bit, particularly 2. But there's a minor weakness on the Volcanion side, and even Gyarados' side with Rock, but being watered, I wouldn't really call that a weakness. Likewise, ground is a problem for both Honedge and for Volcanion, because water actually doesn't resist ground. It's neutral to ground. So even if you would say that, yes, technically because of the water being there, it's at least weakened, I wouldn't call that neutral. That's still, the fire element is still going to hurt. The ground element is still going to hurt. But again, water type moves are going to, so even though those count, I don't count them really, but they are there. No, your biggest weaknesses are twofold. 1, 3 times weakness to grass all around on this team. Sharpedo, Clodser, and Milotic, 3 times weakness to grass right out the gate. Volcanion and Gyarados can bypass that because they have a secondary typing that is legit resistant to it, fire and flying respectively. And Honedge is just straight out negs it with being a steel type. But unfortunately, the one type this team cannot go up against. And when I go over the part of the video where we're talking about what region they do best in, you'll see where this is a problem. Electric. The only type on this list, this team here, that resists electric is steel. And it comes from an unevolved Pokemon. Everything else here. Gyarados has a ×4 weakness. Everything else has a ×2 weakness to electric. Unfortunately, it just was not able to get over the main weakness of water. And that actually becomes a big problem when we go over which regions this team would be best in. I'll get it right out of the way. The best region the region I think this thing has the best this team has the best chance in is Johto, straight out. Now you may be asking why. Well, you start very quickly with Faulkner. Water and flying are basically neutral to each other, but if you can beat Faulkner with just a Totodile, which you should theoretically be able to do, you can beat it with a Carvanha, which is what her main Pokemon would be. I also look at this basically saying that the Pokemon she would, in the order she would gain these Pokemon, she'd start with the Carvanha, which turns to Sharpedo at 30, and immediately you give her the Mega, because that's how I played it out. Is to give her a Honedge, you give her a Magikarp, then you go to Milotic, then you go to Skrelp, and then you go to Volcanion because it's mythical. So Bugsy would be a little bit more difficult because the dark typing on Carvana would be a little weak, but the Honedge's steel typing, along with having some ghost type moves, would help mitigate that no problem. That damn Milk Tank is, again, so problematic. Even with having the immunity to normal type moves, that damn Rolla is a problem. But between having Intimidate on Gyarados is most likely what you'd have, and a much more capable Carvana with Rough Skin, no less, plus still having a Steel type, which is still resistant to normal, and Rock, I think the Milk Tank should be able to be handled. Then you got Morty. At that point, you have 4 Pokemon. One's a near fully evolved Dark type. 2, a fully evolved Gyarados. Milotic at that point, which you can get at any level. At that point, it's no issue. Then you go into trying to remember the 5th gym leader's name, the fighting to Chuck. Then you go into Chuck, who only has a Primeape, it's a Primeape and a Poliwrath. And Gyarados alone should be able to handle that without too much difficulty. And even then, you have enough Mon in that team to be able to handle it. At that point, you'll have Volcanion, who with Fire-type moves should obliterate Jasmine. It should obliterate Jasmine. And at that point, you can pretty much clear, because with all these Mon on your team being mostly water, you should know a couple Ice-type moves as well. So you should be able to handle... Pierce or Price. You should be able to handle Price, no problem, and Claire should not be an issue. Then you would go into the Elite Four. Koga should not be that big of an issue, but will give you a bit of a problem. It's still, if I remember correctly, Bruno, but you have Gyarados who's got Flying. You've got Honedge, who, even though power-wise not that great, will have some immunity to Fighting-type moves. Then you would go, I believe it's... What's the next one after that, if I'm not mistaken? What is I'm actually got to remember, what is the Johto? Because I know Lance is the champion of Johto. He's not the champion of Black and White 2. Come on. No, I want, there we go. I want Heart Gold, Soul Silver. He's not the champion of Kanto. That was Blue. He's the champion of Johto. So who was it again? I know the 4th Elite Four member is Karen. Yeah. Is Karen. Oh, no, sorry. Karen is actually... No, I was right. And that's who I was forgetting. I always forget Will. Because who remembers Will? Psychic gym leader. Yeah, no. Sharpedo, just with the Dark type alone and Mega Evolution, should handle the vast majority of that team. Executor would be the only issue. And even then, not much. You're going to outspeed it. Probably have an Ice type move at that point. Like I said, Koga will be problematic with the poison to a certain degree. Honedge can neg a bit of that. But it's not that big a deal. Again... Bruno should not be that big of an issue, really, when it breaks down. Neither should Karen, honestly, because due to the way this team's set up, you should be able to have some... Because it's supposed to be dark, but there's only 3 dark types. One of them is completely weak to you with Houndoom. And then one is a Gengar, so you should be able to take that down easily. So then you're needing to have either Fairy, Bug, or Fighting-type moves. And given this team, well, it's not likely. You still have a Mega, and you still have a Mon with 120 attack, plus Volcanion, so it shouldn't be that difficult. Lance is going to be your biggest problem to deal with, but I don't see it really being... Because, again, you should have a lot of Ice-type moves on this team. You should be able to get through Lance, which will snag you the victory. So that's good. You could definitely become the Hoenn Gym Leader. Or Hoenn Elite Four, or leader, or champion. That's what I was trying to get at. But I'm going to be flat out honest. Every other region in these games, minus Alola, because we don't go over that because it's not a standard region with the Elite Four or anything. Well, it has Elite Four, but you know what I mean. Not with the Gym Challenge. This is not a good team. Let me go as quick as I can here. Kanto, you start with Carvana, should take care of Brock, no problem. You get to Misty. Carvana will be able to last for a bit, and Rough Skin should be useful, and then Honedge's defenses are just going to be too much for them to get through. You then immediately run into a roadblock with Surge, because if we're going with the idea that you don't really surpass their levels very much, maybe you're a little higher, but you don't surpass too much, you're not getting through that Raichu. Your Gyarados is down immediately, your Sharpedo is still Carvana, and even with Honedge being resistant, it's not going to handle itself very well. So that's a roadblock. I don't actually realistically see you getting through Surge. And even if you can, you immediately then are dealing with Erica afterwards. If you're going by the standard way you're supposed to do it, you're dealing with Erica afterwards. So even with adding on the Milotic, the only advantage you actually have at that point is Gyarados. And even then, with all the grass cheese that she's throwing at you, I don't see you beating him. So unfortunately, I don't think you could get through Kanto. I don't think you could get halfway through Kanto on this team. Even if I were to be nice and generous and give you the entire team going forward, but the catch would be you have to keep him at a lower level, or at least equal level to the gym leader. You would still be struggling the entire way. Even if you get all the way to blue, his team is completely balanced out. So I don't think you'd be able to get through him. Likewise, the same problem with Hoenn. Once you get to Watson's actually even worse to deal with than freaking Surge, because he's got 3 Mon on his team, if you're just going with the Ruby or Sapphire version, that are electric and steel type, and you have nothing except Volcanion, which, as I established, you get last in this journey. By the 6th gym, you'd have them. So unless you start with Volcanion instead, which makes no sense for this team, you'd start with Sharpedo. And maybe unless you pick him up early, you would not be able to get through Watson. And even if you're able to get through Watson, let me put it this way. If you're able to get through Watson, there's a chance. You can possibly beat this entire region. Because Steven Stone, while I love Steven Stone's team, is Steel and Rock mostly. So if you can get there, you might have a chance. But I don't think you're getting through Watson. And likewise, you're going to struggle in Sinnoh, because even though you will have access to Mega Sharpedo pretty early on, once you get to Bachner, the electric type 8th gym leader, it's problematic, because he's got all his Mon have electric moves, the moves that completely wipe out the majority of your party, and the one Mon it doesn't wipe out is an unevolved Steel Ghost type, who's probably getting wrecked pretty early on. Even if you manage to get through him, you still got to beat Cynthia, who is bar none one of the strongest champions in any of the games, just by facing off with her. And her team is way too balanced for you to take on. She literally has Storm Drain on her Gastrodon, which means all your water type moves are completely SOL. She's got the damn Roserade. So she's got a type advantage right then and there. In fact, let me double check. What are if I were to look at Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, which not the best of remakes, they were just too generic, but her team is actually arguably the strongest version of her team, because I believe they are fully IV'd, and they're like competitive teams. Everyone was like, yeah, no, the game really wasn't good, but damn, the Elite Four was actually challenging for a change. I know for a fact I didn't beat her the first go. Did any of you? Let me know. Again, I'm talking about Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. But yeah, her Gastrodon literally has Storm Drain. Her Roserade has a type advantage. She has her own Milotic, which also has Scald, Ice Beam, and Miracle and Recover. Lucario's a problematic, because you don't have any sort of strength against it unless you designed a team for that. There's Spiritomb, which unless you give like Dazzling Gleam to Milotic, you're going to just have to force your way through that thing. Like, you're not equipped to handle this. You're really not. So yeah, Cynthia's going to wipe the floor with you. And Unova has the same problem that both Kanto and Hoenn have. Once you get to the 4th gym leader, those 2 Emolgas and that's a Substrika are going to wreck your team. Wreck your team. Now, that said, just like with Hoenn, if by some miracle, because you were at least able to get to Milotic at this point, you'll have 4 versus the 3. If you're somehow able to get through that, then there is a shot, because I can't remember the ground type gym leader's name off the top of my head, but he's just ground, and then there's ice and flying. So at that point, you'll have your full team, and you should be able to get through those guys. The Elite Four isn't actually based in any type that's going to give you a difficulty. And by the end, Alder is difficult. I mean, his ace is the Volcarona, so your water type move should be able to handle that. Unfortunately, he's also got several other bugs, so your Mega Sharpedo is actually probably screwed in this fight. And then, I mean, He's also got Buffalo, which you have no specific strength against having except a Hone Edge, and even then I believe it knows Head Smash. So yeah, I don't see you beating Unova either, nor do I see you beating Kalos, because quite frankly, you just getting to the third gym leader, who's a fighting type specialist, your Carvana still wouldn't be fully evolved. You would just have a Gyarados and Hone Edge. Now, granted, having a Ghost type is pretty advantageous against those teams because because she actually doesn't really target Ghosts very well. But still. And then you got to go against a Grass type leader and an Electric type leader after that. Even if you're able to manage getting through all that and somehow beat the Elite Four, which it's possible. One's a Fire type user, another's a Water, another's a Steel, and another's a Dragon. Diantha's team, again, is too balanced, and she has Grass, and she has Mon that I believe has electric moves. She's got the 2 fossils, she's got a Gourgeist, she's got her Gardevoir, she's got a Holucha, if I remember correctly, so I don't think you're beating her either. And likewise, Galar, you're kind of screwed just from the first gym in Galar. It's the highest level gym in the game, and it's all grass. So you're kind of effed from the beginning when it comes to Galar. And even if you manage out of that, you still got to go against a water gym after that. So, yeah, and then you still got to deal with, if you're somehow able to get through the entire game, which I don't think you would be able to, you would still have to deal with the champion, who I'm forgetting his name at the moment. And his team is pretty good, like straight out good. And again, I don't think you can get through Paldea either, because you start against a bug type leader who's already going to be strong against your Carvana for type advantage. So right out the gate, you're kind of screwed. Now, granted, I know with Paldea you can start anywhere, but let's be honest, if we're going by how you're theoretically supposed to do this, the game, you start with the bug leader. I actually started with the grass first, not realizing the bug was first, because I tried to do the game in order, and I didn't actually know what the full order of the gyms were. I actually fought Grusha, I want to say 5th or 6th, and therefore when I barely beat Grusha, which was the last gym leader, so I'm like, oh, crap, I guess I'm now overpowered for the rest of the game. So on my second playthrough, I tried to do it in order. But yeah, okay. These videos, I'm going to have to try to sum up these videos better, because adding on which region they would do best in really lengthens out the video. But regardless, that's my thoughts. What do you think? That's my team for Harribel. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.